Hello, everyone. Welcome to, yes, the Bone Zone. Today, I'm Professor FloatAwayLilly. I have no professional criteria to make that claim, but I feel very confident that nobody's going to stop me. So, this is the anatomical accuracy of 2022 Halloween decor. This is the panel that I will be hosting today. So let's see if this will work. Okay. You might be asking yourself, why should I listen to you? And that's a great question. Don't listen to anything you read on the internet, especially about human health and medicine. Not everyone is a doctor. I'm certainly not a doctor. But I do have a Bachelor of Science in Human Physiology, so I have quite a bit of knowledge about the subject. I was an undergraduate TA in physiology lab and in immunology classes, so I did teach anatomy and physiology to an extent. I also have 1/3 of a doctorate of physical therapy when I took a gross anatomy class and a cadaver dissection. So I spent a whole summer learning about the anatomy of the human musculoskeletal system. I'm also just a big fan of skeletons in general. I like decorating my house with them. I like thinking about, I don't know, I've got these chicken feet candle holders. They're a lot of fun. So I was out there looking at Halloween decorations anyway. Also, I dress like this, and I feel like that makes me inherently more trustworthy. You decide if you want to listen to me, though. All right. Heads up for a content warning. We will be discussing anatomy and skeletal structures, and it will contain images. I will not be putting any human dissection or skeletons in the presentation. There will be drawn representations of it. And there will be real animal skeleton taxidermy. And there's going to be like pictures of snake and shark and spiders. I'll try to give you a heads up if you just really don't like snakes. Oh, wait, was there something else? Oh, yeah. I will also be discussing endangered animals in conservation, and there will be cartoon blood. All right. This is a disclaimer. I love all Halloween decoration. Accuracy is not everything in the world of Halloween decoration. Artistic representation of things are just as valid. This is purely for fun. So I don't mean anything mean by the things that I say today. All right. What were my methods? I went to several stores, Spirit Halloween, Target, Joann Fabrics, Michael's, Home Goods, my local grocery store, World Market, Marshalls, and TJ Maxx. I took a bunch of pictures of Halloween decorations, and now I'm presenting them to you in how accurate they are in physiology. Okay, the bones of the human skeleton. Before I go into how accurate they are, I'm going to teach you a little bit about how this works. So we're going to start with the skull today, and then we're going to go down into the ribs and the hands. But the basics of the human body is that adult humans have 206 to 213 bones after starting from 270 as an infant. Your bones fuse as you get older, so you will have less. But the final number really does depend on the person. There is some variation to anatomy. There's variation to human anatomy. So not everybody's skeleton is the same, and I think that's pretty rad. Yeah. What's the purpose of bones? Why do we have bones? So bones permit locomotion, motor capability. They protect your vital organs. They facilitate breathing. They play a role in homeostasis, and they produce a variety of cells in the marrow that are critical for survival. So your red blood cells come from your bone marrow. There's some of your immune cells that come from your bone marrow. There's it's a fun story if you go into immunology. There's a type of cell that starts in your bone marrow and then goes up to your thyroid, and then like only 1% of them make it out of your thyroid to like do actual immune system functions. Pretty rad if that's something that interests you. All right, so starting with the skull. We're going to start at the frontal view, the face, the facial bones. What do we have? What are we looking at? So you've got your frontal bone. That's your forehead bone, basically. Your nasal bone, which is up here on the nose. This is cartilage. So there's no bones in the tip of your nose, but behind your nose there are some bones. Typically, Halloween decorations, skulls just kind of black out the nose and the eye sockets. So you won't really see that. So I'm not going to talk your head off about those bones today. In here, we've also got the maxilla and the zygomatic bone, or your cheekbone. It's right here. And then, of course, the mandible, which it moves up and down. It connects back here. Zygomatic bone is the best name for a bone, in my opinion. There are, how many bones? There's like 5, 6 bones that make up your eye socket. So back in the back there, you've got your sphenoid bone. You've got your ethmoid and your lacrimal bones. Just a bunch of little bones in there. The best name for a bone is Linda. I did not understand reference, but yes. All right. What else we got? Okay, so the main thing that you will see on a Halloween skull to differentiate things is the sutures. So the sutures are like the lines that you'll see, and they're basically where two bones meet and form a line. So you've got your caroidal suture, which is up here. It's where your frontal bone meets the rest of the bones of your cranium. You've got several sutures around the nose. So this is your frontonasal. A lot of the sutures are named for the bones that meet. So your frontal bone, your nasal bone becomes your frontonasal suture. And then there's the nasal bone to the mandible. Nasomaxillary, not your maxillary bone. Your zygomatic bone to your maxilla is obviously called the zygomaticomaxillary suture. There's no sutures on the mandible. But another important thing is that there are 3 sets of foramen. So there's a pair up here right above your eye. There's a pair here next to your nose and a pair here on your mandible. Those are for blood and nerve supply coming out from inside of the skull to innervate like your skin and your muscles that are out here. So those are the highlights, the things that we're looking for on these Halloween skulls. So let's start at Michael's. Here's 3 sets of skulls. As you can see, they are missing the foramen. They would be here, here, and here, but they don't have any little divots indicating that. Again, the nose and the eyes are just kind of blacked out, so you can't see any of the bones behind there. But here in the middle, you've got a distinct zygomaticomaxillary suture, which gives this one bonus points. And there might be one on this skull on the left here, but it's just kind of, there's just kind of dents in there. Another thing that you'll see on skulls is this here. This is called the here we go. The metopic suture. It goes right up here. So when you were a baby, you had two frontal bones. You had two forehead bones, and there was a metopic suture going up between the two of those. As you grew older, those bones fused. The bones were there basically when you were a baby so that you could get out of your mother when you were born. Your head has to be somewhat squishy in order to exit your mother's womb. So your skull was squishy and there were more bones in your skull. But you don't need those anymore and as an adult, so they fuse. And all that's left is a metopic suture here. Some people's don't fuse. I believe it's about 6% of adults will have a persistent metopic suture. And there's no like consequence of this happening. It's just humans, everybody's a little different. Everybody's bones fuse a little differently. So I think sometimes on a CT scan, it gets like the reader of the CT scan will be like, oh, hey, what's going on here? But other than that, no real consequences. Anyway, back to Michael's. Yeah, again, you won't see any metopic sutures here, which I don't know. Maybe these persons' frontal bones fused all the way and there was no remnant of a suture. Hard to say. All right, more Michael's skulls. No metopic sutures again, but I would say that this gold skull here is the best in terms of facial bones at Michael's. You've got your 1, 2, 3 pairs of foramen. They even made an attempt at the eye socket. You can see this kind of C-shaped hole. That's the hole in the back of your eye socket where the nerves of your eye, the nerves and the blood supply go from your eye into your skull. So I was a big fan of that. Distinct nasal bone. We've got our zygomatico maxillary suture here in the front there. Yeah, I would say a pretty good showing. There's even this suture here. 10 out of 10 in terms of facial bones on this one here. We've also got this pillow. Again, they've got this one here, distinct nasal bones. No foramen, as far as I can see, or on this one either. But they do appear to have most of the sutures in place. Yes, fun stuff does show up on CT and MRIs. You never know what you're going to get. All right, looking at now the lateral view or the side view of the skull, some things to note. So again, we have our frontal bone, our forehead bone. Then we have our two parietal bones. There's a pair of them that make up kind of the top of the cranium here, and an occipital bone that sits right here at the base of your skull. On the side, you've got your sphenoid bone and then your temporal bone. Important landmarks that I would say. Your zygomatic arch here, which is kind of the back of your cheekbone. There's a suture in there. It never shows up. Fremen, like in Dune? No, foramen. That is the correct spelling. So yes, you're going to want to look for this, the external acoustic meatus in the temporal bone. That is the hole through which you hear. So you've got a hole in your skull that goes from where your ear is open into the skull. So that's where like your this is sort of the concha and the inner ear sits, and the nerves supply and blood supply need to come in and out of there so that you can hear effectively. A lot of the skulls that I've seen do not have that, so the people whose skulls these were could not hear, I will assume. Yes, but take note of this sphenoid bone and zygomatic, not zygomatic bone, sphenoid bone and temporal bone here. That is where we're going to see a lot of issues on some of these skulls. So, yes, the sutures, again, there's going to be a suture going all the way around the temporal bone, sutures between on either side of the parietal bone. So the coronal suture, coronal is in crown, so it sits atop your head as if a crown. There's two sutures that go around the occipital bone. You don't need to know them unless you're taking an anatomy class. That's all I have to say. So let's go back to Michael's for some more skulls. So this skull on the left here, you can see distinctly the temporal bone and the sphenoid bone. I always forget what that one's called. The temporal bone and the sphenoid bone. We have a coronal suture up here. It's a little bit far back, maybe, hard to tell. But then there isn't a suture between the temporal bone and the occipital bone here. But we do have an external auditory meatus, so there is a possibility that this skull could have heard. And yeah, we've got this suture here between the zygomatic bone and the temporal bone. So props to that. This is a pretty good lateral view of a skull in my book. And then here, the skull in the middle. It appears we have an external auditory meatus again, kind of. We've got kind of a temporal sphenoid bone here, but I don't know. The coronal suture is kind of either far back or non-existent. So we've just kind of got this one long bone that goes from the forehead all the way to the back of the skull. It's, you know, it's got a bunch of pearls on the front, so I think that's the main draw of this skull rather than anatomical accuracy. But if you look at this skull on the right, it's a plantar, so I guess it wasn't that important. But you can't, there's maybe a temporal bone, kind of. But this skull has no way of hearing. There's no external auditory meatus. Also, yeah, it's flat here. You'll notice that there should be this kind of gap in the middle between like the mandible and the back of the skull. Nah, it's just flat. Anyway, my personal notes. So this, again, the gold skull here, which is what I said had great facial bones in terms of the ones at Michael's. There's a problem here. I don't know if you can spot it, but the temporal bone just kind of goes all the way back into the occipital bone. Our parietal bone just kind of keeps going, and then our temporal bone and our occipital bone have fused together. But we do have a sphenoid bone up here, and we have this suture here, and an external auditory meatus. So I think if we just added a suture between the temporal bone and the occipital bone, this skull be pretty good, 10 out of 10. But yeah, going back, these are some kissing skulls over here. This one has a flower crown to indicate that it's a man and a woman, I guess, because we have to be very heteronormative about this. But the temporal bone, the sphenoid bone, and the occipital bone have kind of fused again. We've got another long parietal bone, and the frontal bone goes back all the way to like the mid skull. That coronal suture here should be a little bit more forward, but I'm nitpicking. Okay, Going to the top and the back of the skull, there should be this sagittal suture separating the two parietal bones, and then a kind of a rounded or V-shaped suture called the lambdoid suture separating the occipital bone from the parietal bones. So back to Michael's. This skull in the middle, absolutely no sagittal suture. We've got one big parietal bone. We've got a sagittal suture for the left one. And on the right one here, there is a suture for the occipital bone, but it does kind of come to like a point. I don't know. I don't have an extensive knowledge with human skulls, but I feel like it should not be as pointy and go up that high. We've got more skulls. This coronal suture again goes back a little too far. This occipital bone is fine, but again, no sagittal suture cutting up in the middle there, which is what we should get. And then on our gold skull, which I want to root for, but the sagittal suture kind of looks like the seam of the plastic molding. But if you want, you can say that's the sagittal suture, and then we're doing great. All right, going to home goods. This is a smooth, sparkly boy. He has no sutures, but he's very bedazzled. I love that for him. Not very accurate, but you know, he looks good. That's what matters. More at home goods. So these two skulls in the middle have, you could interpret it as a crack, or you could interpret it as their frontal bones never fused. So now they have two frontal bones forever. Good for them. Yeah, this stack of skulls, they have this suture here too. Good for them. But the side of them, again, we have just one large temporal bone instead of seeing a sphenoid bone up here. But they're a little bit more irregular, so it's kind of hard to tell what's going on there. Okay, we have another pillow at Home Goods. So as far as the front of the skull, there aren't really any sutures that we can see on this side. You can kind of see that zygomato-maxillary suture, but I guess it's kind of there on this side. But we do have a sphenoid bone on the side. Love that for them, because not everyone has that. Yeah. Marshall's. So at Marshall's, there was this cool skull tray. The different skulls all had different levels of accuracy and sutures. You can kind of see we've got like a sphenoid and a temporal bone here. Hard to tell if this one does have one. But as far as this face on the right here we've got our suture going up. We've got our sutures around the nasal bone. We don't have any other sutures, but we do appear to have the foramen on the mandible. We have a candle at Marshall's. Very smooth. This hand is kind of, I don't know about that hand. We'll get into hands later, but suffice to say that's very inaccurate. Not very impressed. All right, moving on to World Market. Things look pretty good, honestly, as far as the cranial bones. The facial bones could use with a little more detail maybe, but yeah, pretty good. This skull, again at World Market, not really looking for any sutures or foramen here, but it does have one big crack on the top. I assume that's how they died, maybe a hammer or a mallet, but bugs have come to move in. Once again, we are at World Market. This has an asymmetrical occipital bone. It kind of goes up on one side and down on the other. I don't know what's going on there. But, you know, it's got our suture here in the center. It's got our nasal bone. It's hard to tell if there are any other foramen or sutures because the texture of the skull is kind of, you know, uneven. But it does have gems growing out of it, and that reminds me of the last season of Doctor Who. The villains also had gems growing out of them. So maybe it's an alien. All right, moving on to target. One big temporal bone. It goes back pretty far. I don't know what's going on. Kind of an occipital bone here at the base. We've got our sagittal suture going up the middle, so that's decent. We've got foramen up here on the eyebrows, on the mandible, and kind of a little bit on our cheekbones. So we've got our 3 pairs of foramen. It's okay. That's how I would rate this. This skull at target, though, very interesting. I'm pretty sure this is just like the plastic, like just where the 2 pieces of plastic mold together. But if you interpret it as a suture, they've got one going through the middle of the zygomatic bone and the temporal bone. And then it goes up into what I like a cranial suture. So that's just a fascinating turn of events. Maybe you can interpret this as an alien skull, and alien skulls kind of have like a front piece and a back piece and then a mandible. Up to interpretation, I guess. All right, the big skull at Joanne. This skull is like, I don't know, the size of my torso. It's a very large skull. So in my opinion, they should have no excuse not to like be accurate. However, there's some issues here. Let's start at the back of the skull. So this occipital bone, it just kind of goes all the way down. And this is kind of an issue with how they've set this skull up. So the mandible goes down lower than the back of your skull. Like if I stand to my side here, here is where your mandible ends, here is where your occipital bone ends. So if you want to have a skull sitting, it needs to be like that. But they've put this skull kind of upright. So as a result, you have to extend your occipital bone all the way down. But the occipital bone just kind of, it starts and then it curves under. So, I mean, that's kind of the limitations of the decoration. I don't know if I'd hold that personally against the artist who designed this. But we've got our temporal bone, and it is distinct from our sphenoid bone. So that's great. We are missing the suture between the temporal bone and the zygomatic bone here. But we do have this suture between our zygomatic bone and our, not mandible, this bone. I said it earlier. But like, I guess we kind of have the foramen on the mandible here, and maybe the foramen here by the nose, but we don't have any up here on our eyebrows. There is a crack above your, what is this, the right eyebrow of this skull. I assume that's damage that the skull has taken in because there are no sutures in the human body that sit like that. All right, we are now moving on to the Spirit Halloween skulls. These have more artistic interpretation than those we've seen before. So this one has a handprint on it, and for some reason the handprint has left dents in the shape of the fingerprint of that person. So I'm not sure how that happened. But as far as the anatomy of it, it's pretty good. We've got our external auditory meatus, so we can hear. We've got sutures in about the right place. We've got our foramen. Pretty good. Another one at Spirit Halloween, again, pretty good. It's missing the sagittal suture again, but again, it's kind of replaced by the seam of the mold of the plastic. But I do like a lightning skull. It's cute. This one makes me uncomfortable and I don't want to talk about it. So this is the Joker skull. Again, sagittal suture going up the middle has been replaced by the seam of the plastic. Metopic skull suture here in the front, it splits into two. That's not how that should be. So, like I said, the metopic suture goes up the frontal bone, splitting it into two from when you were a baby and then fuses together. So either the skull has taken a very specific damage or this person was born with 3 frontal bones and kind of a V, like 3 triangle frontal bones, and then those fused together, which not impossible, but very unlikely. Yeah, it's the Joker. He does whatever he wants, I guess. But yeah, our occipital, temporal, and sphenoid bone here on the sides have fused into one bone that goes all the way around the back of the skull. But so not the most accurate, but I don't think they were going for accuracy. I think they were going for, it's the Joker. Woo! All right. But we have now reached the end of our skulls. So we will be moving into the spine. So the spine is a column. It supports your head, which is pretty heavy. It supports your ribs. It supports upward standing. It's the reason we are bipedal rather than quadruped, because of the shape of our spines. The spooky noodle. So the basic structure of a vertebra is you've got this round pad. All the pads stack up against each other. Behind the pad, there's a hole for the spinal cord to pass through. And then you've got the back, which is these spines. There are 3, 2 that go out to the side and 1 that points back. These are for muscular attachments. You've got all sort of muscles going on in your back, and they need to attach somewhere, because if they're not attached to anything, when they contract, you're not going to move. So all of the space back here is for muscles to attach. So that's very important. Spines are super fun. You can go sideways, you can go front, you can go back, you can twist around. All sorts of exciting things happening in your spine. But as far as the anatomy, hang on. The part of this that I'm about to do a speed round of counting spines. So here's what you need to know. You have 7 cervical vertebrae. Those are the vertebrae of your neck. You've got your atlas and your axis up at the top that have their own distinct shape. You're not really going to see those shapes in any Halloween decoration, but you know that they have a distinct shape. And that's what matters. So yeah, 7 neck bones. Then you have 7 thoracic vertebra, which are the vertebra that support your rib cage, which is very important because you need your rib cage to facilitate breathing. When you breathe in, it expands, and that creates negative pressure so that air will come into your lungs. And when you breathe out, they contract, and that pushes air out of your lungs. So your ribs are very important. You will have 12 thoracic vertebrae, with which 12 ribs will be attached. Then, going down, your lumbar vertebra, down here at the bottom of the spine. 5 of them. Remember the number 5. And then you have your sacrum, which was, you had 5 of them when you were a baby. They have now fused into one solid sacral bone. And then at the bottom, you have your coccyx or your tailbone, which is 3 to 5 fused bones. Again, depending on the person. We're all a little different. How I was taught to remember this, the numbering at least, the 7, 12, 5 is you eat breakfast at 7, you eat lunch at 12 noon, and you eat dinner at 5 p.m. So now if you ever take an anatomy class, you have a memory device. Onto the ribs. So yes, like I said, 12 of them, they attach at or below the same numbered thoracic vertebra. Towards the top, they attach kind of between each vertebra. And then once you get down to the bottom of the thoracic spine, they attach just kind of on the side or in the middle. So the attachment point varies as you go down. You have 7 what are called true ribs. These are ribs that wrap around from your spine and connect kind of directly, I guess, with the sternum, which is this bone up here in the front. And then you have 5 false ribs, and the last 2 are floating ribs that do not attach to the sternum by way of cartilage. That's what this blue stuff is. That's the cartilage that kind of attaches your ribs to your sternum. The reason that it's cartilage and not bone all the way through is, again, because you need to breathe. So it needs to be a little stretchier than bone is in order to facilitate that movement. Cool? Are we good? Okay. We are going to go on to our bone counting speed run. So this lovely just rib cage at Michael's. The first thing I saw was that the sternum has like segments. Your sternum does not have segments. There's 3 parts of your sternum. There should be this part, and then this is all solid, and then you've got another part at the base. But for some reason, quite a few sternums that I saw were segmented like this. I don't know why. I cannot explain the artists. But anyway, our thoracic spine only has 10, and we only have 9 ribs. So we are running a little short, and a lot of the rib cages that I saw are running a little short. Yeah, so we're at Michael's again. These are the they're having a fun time in their coffin, I guess. But yeah, we've got only 5 cervical vertebrae. We've got 11 thoracic, so we're only missing 1 thoracic vertebra and 1 rib, and we only have 1 lumbar vertebra. Like if you look, we've got 1 lumbar vertebra, and that attaches directly to the sacrum. Again, the heterosexual couple that you know because she's wearing a flower crown. Let's see. The guy has all of their ribs and vertebra. The woman is missing a couple. I don't know why, because she's shorter, I guess. This absolute queen, whomst I stand. In this view, she's only got 8 ribs and 11 thoracic vertebrae in the same amount of space. And a whole 8 lumbar vertebrae, as opposed to the 5 that you're supposed to have. Going to Home Goods, again, we've got a segmented sternum for some reason, but we have all of our true ribs. We're missing our last couple of false ribs here. World Market, our yoga skeleton. 13 thoracic vertebra, which is more than you need, and only 11 ribs. So we're missing a rib, but we've got an extra thoracic vertebra. We're also missing some lumbar and cervical vertebra. All right. Yoga Boy, same issues as the last one, again at World Market. All right, Target. We're missing one of our cervical, thoracic, and floating ribs. Target, he's missing his floating ribs and a cervical vertebra. He's got one extra lumbar. Spirit Halloween, about the same thing. Okay, this pen at Spirit Halloween, it's only missing one vertebra. So, like, props to whoever made this. They did their best. This supermarket, we've got 10 ribs and 5 lumbar. So, the correct number of lumbar vertebra, but we're missing our floating ribs. World Market, again, missing some, but we have all 5 lumbar vertebra. All right. Cartoon bonus round. Let's count the ribs. Going from left to right. 6, 5, 6, 6. We've cut our ribs in half. Again, we've got 5, maybe 8, and another 5. Number of ribs get cut in half when you cartoon something, I guess. All right. It's like 1, and we're just getting into the hand, but that's okay. Okay, the hand. Basically, you've got your carpals. You've got your... The carpals are these tiny little bones in the palm of your hand that allow your hand to just move around in any kind of way it wants. On top of that, you've got your metacarpals, your proximal, middle, and distal phalanges. Your thumb, it's only got your proximal and your distal phalange. It does not have a middle like the rest of your fingers. Another thing you want to note, this is the radius that goes on the thumb side. It is wider. And then on the pinky side, you have a smaller ulna. This has been reversed on a lot of the skeletons that I saw. So looking at this hand, you'll see we don't have as many carpals as we need. They've all been one. So this person can't move their hand around very well. And also, I will give them props. They appear to have the radius on the right side. Small victories. On this one, our radius is on the wrong side. The larger bone is on the pinky side with the smaller bone on the thumb side. And again, our carpals aren't very great. This hand was on a wreath at Home Goods, and it's actually pretty good. It's got kind of the proper arrangement of the carpals. So my props to the artist who made this. Once again, we have our radius and ulna flipped. You've got this larger bone on the side of the pinky again. This is what you'll see a lot in hand skeletons. They've just kind of got 2 rows of like little round bones. They kind of sit in rows. If you look at an actual human hand skeleton, they're very irregular. No 2 of the bones look the same. Again, we've got just these 2 rows of little pebble bones. Don't know why. It's very common. The artist appears to have at least looked at a diagram like this, so it's decent, but there appear to be some extra bones going down here to meet the ulna. They've got the radius and the ulna on the right side, but I don't know why there's these extra bones. But this is a candle you can get. It's okay. Here's a target ghoul. Again, 2 rows of just round little boys for the carpals. This hand at target again, our radius and ulna are reversed, it would appear. But these little bones in here, they're irregular, and they get points for not having the 2 rows of little round teeth. All right, they did the mash. They did the monster mash. So we have a bat man and a mermaid. A mermaid, depending on your interpretation. Now, I cannot say how human anatomy would change if we were fish people. So I'm not going to make very many comments, but that does appear to be how fish tails kind of work. However, I have some issues with this Batman. So there's a little thing that we call divergent evolution, and that's basically that all mammals evolved from the same ancestor. So all of our bones kind of changed off of one base point. So if you look at the structure of any mammal, or honestly, like any land animal, fish kind of do their own weird thing, but land animals, you've got your humerus, which is your main bone here. You've got two bones similar to the human radius and the ulna. You've got your carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges. If you look at the bird, boom, two bones, little bones, phalanges. Again, on the bat, one bone, two bones, little bones, phalanges going out from there. So my problem with this bat boy, why does he have 4 upper limbs? That's not how I would, if you want wings, you've got to give up your arms. That's also an issue I have with like this kind of dragon where it's got all 4 limbs and then the wings in the back. If this was from Earth, that's not how that would evolve. But you could interpret this as an alien bat boy if you wanted. Yeah, you can't have arms and wings, unfortunately. Because a main problem that you're going to run into is how the muscles attach. This kind of just has like the bat wings sitting on top of your scapula. I'm not sure how you're going to fully support your body in flight when you've got what your humerus should be sitting on top of the middle of your scapula. I don't think that's going to work out. I don't think this creature would be capable of flight. I'm sorry if that breaks your heart. Anyway, yeah, then there's this thing, which I just... There you go. But yeah, unfortunately, you can't just glue wings on us because, like the muscles required for flight, they attach all the way to in birds and in bats. They attach all the way up to the front, and then in the back, and then you gotta fly. So it wouldn't work out. All right, this is what I like to call the Alexandria's Genesis pillow. It's the Michaels Purple Eye Halloween Decorative Pillow. I would not say this is anatomically accurate. Purple is a very rare eye color. This person is probably wearing contacts. People say Elizabeth Taylor had purple eyes, but she really just had deep blue eyes that appeared purple in certain light. Some people with albinism kind of have purple eyes if you look at them the right way. It's basically just because in albinism, your pigment is taken away. So you'll just see the red in the back of their eyes. And then if you have, a little bit of blue pigmentation in your eyes and you look at it through a certain light, the blue and the red combine and they appear purple. But yeah, so why did I call it Alexandria's Genesis? There's a fake sort of, it kind of started on Tumblr, but it really originated in like a Daria fan fiction website where this person made up the reason that her OC had purple eyes. And then it got spread around and people thought that like Alexandria's Genesis was a real disease. But anyway, that's what this pillow made me think of. And for that, I believe it is cursed. All right, J Fashion Interlude. It's 105, so whatever, it's fine. All right, Chris's Hiyaki Yako, Phantom Flower of the Dusk from Alice and the Pirates. We have a skeleton. It's a snake. It's a snake skeleton. It's missing some ribs. It might be missing some cervical, but it's hard to tell. Royal Princess Alice's Gashadokuro. It's got an OP, an OB, and socks that all have this skeleton boy. His ribs seem to kind of go down too far, but I don't know if the number is inaccurate. Again, it's hard to tell. Again, artistic interpretations have a little bit of leeway. It's just here to look good. Agato Designs My Lovely Bones body chain. It comes in white, black, and red. Very much an artistic representation of your ribs, but I like it and I have it. So there you go. Miss Danger Heavenly Bones. I want it. Not enough ribs, but again, artistic interpretation. Still gorgeous. Ruby Rabbit Rose Bones Tights. It is very accurate. It takes into account how the vertebrae change as you go down the spine. If you'll look, the back has like differences and it looks like a real spine, and I'm a big fan and I want these now. Excalibur Lolita Hayaki Yago OP comes in black, red, white, and navy. This is in my presentation because it was submitted by Victorix, so thank you for your submission. I like it. He doesn't appear to have the right number of cervical vertebra. He might have enough ribs, but they are kind of hidden behind the wall that he's behind. So I will give this a decent attempt. This is the next couple slides are just things submitted by Lena from Agato Designs. Thank you, Lena. Here we have another artistic interpretation. We've got these. This skirt has these like generic, these are the bones that you'll generally see when someone just draws like a bone. It's got like the two bumps and then the long and then the two bumps again. These don't reflect any bones in the human body. It's kind of like a long bone like your humerus or your femur. But as you'll see on the two bones that I've got on the sides, yeah, it doesn't look exactly like either of those. But it is commonly how cartoon bones are portrayed. Another cord by Lena. Thank you, Lena. All right, time for the beast. It's 8. We've got 5 minutes, so let's go. All right. So the birds, are they real? Undeterminate. There's some problems with this. Feathers. Our wings are made of feathers, but they appear to think that wings are made of bones. You'll see that a lot. Another problem, we've got a tail. Tail feathers are bones now, again. And then this up here. So again, to facilitate flight, birds have what is called a keel. It's it juts out from the sternum. It's a modified sternum. And it attaches to a bunch of muscles so that a bird has the power to flap down hard enough to stay up in the air. If you look at this real skeleton, you'll notice that it does not have feather bones. It stops. There's a armature, and then feathers come down from that. And then you'll see this keel again, which is not very well represented. Yeah, another fun thing about bird ribs, they have this, which comes down. What is it called? A pygostyle, right? No. Pneumatic bones. Nope. I forget what they're called. But yeah, to support the rib cage in flight, birds have extra little things that come down to support the rib cage. But yes, fun fact, pneumatic bones. Birds have hollow bones that they store air in, which makes them lighter, and it also gives them more air. Now you know. All right, this is my corvid tangent. We don't have time for my corvid tangent. I wish we had time for my corvid tangent. I love them. But fun fact, New Caledonian crows make and use tools, and that's really cool for them. They make them. They understand water displacement, which is a pretty advanced thinking skill to have. All right, vultures, because this appears to be a vulture. Again, same problem that you'll see with that like basic bird skeleton. I tried to identify what vulture this specifically maybe was. But again, the skulls of vultures are kind of different from this. These are 3 different vulture kind of skulls that I attempted to match it to. It's not exactly the same, but it's kind of like one of these 2 up here, which were the lappet-faced vulture and the palm nut vulture. But the palm nut vulture is about half a meter tall and it has a 1.5 meter wingspan. So even though it's the smallest vulture, it is still bigger than the model that was in the at Joann's. And like this beak, oh, hang on. This beak looks more like a toucan beak, where there's kind of a round skull and then the beak just kind of comes out. If you look at vulture skulls, the nose comes down a little bit more before we get out to the beak. Fun fact. Okay, please love vultures. They clean up roadkill and they are often killed by cars while they're trying to clean up our roadkill. So it'd be super cool if when you saw roadkill, you would call your local, like it's your sanitation board or whatever, to get that out of the road, because otherwise vultures will come into the middle of the road to pick apart that skull and then they'll get hit by a car. Cars are the most common reason that vultures end up in wildlife center hospitals or they die. Vultures are great. There's a lot of benefits to having vultures around, and we should keep them around forever. Thank you. This has been my Please Love Vultures interlude. All right, we've got a couple minutes left, but do you got any grapes? This is a duck. Again, we've got our tailbones. We've got our missing keel, and we've got wing bones. Quack, quack. There's a difference between this duck skull, which again has that kind of round head and then just jutting out beak. The skulls of ducks go out a little bit further again. This is supposed to be a rubber duck. Its whole body is a rib cage. So I guess it's all breathing, nothing else. It's cute, but again, it has these feather bones. I don't know why it needs that much lung space, and the implications of that are kind of terrifying. Why does it need to breathe so much? What is it doing? What is it hiding? All right. Baba Yaga's candlesticks. I have these. Decently accurate. They look like chicken feet. 10 out of 10. All right. Bats. What are my notes on this bat? Let's find out. Okay. We have what we'll see again. This is pretty good. We've got, but this, you remember how I told you it was one big bone and then 2 bones and then the finger bones? Our matched parallel bones have moved up too far. Our ears, which are cartilage, are here. Your ears should not be bones. Nobody's ears are bones. Get them out of here. But other than that, it's, it's okay. It's fine. Yeah, the rib cage is more of a human shape. It shouldn't have, it should be more shaped like this. Yeah. Boop, boop, boop. This is where the parallel bones should be, but they're over here. I like him. Look at his face. He's seen things. All right, a cat. It's, again, we have our ears. They should not be here. This dog. Whoa. Again, we've got ears. It should not be here. Also, this rib cage goes down way too far. This pig. So pigs on this back part of their spine goes up a little bit more. That's not on this pig. This pig, again, has ears. And the snout is a slightly different shape than this cute little piggy nose that you'll see on this skeleton. Unicorn. Why is its tail bone? I don't know. It's still got ears. I don't know. Its eyes glow. It's a mythical creature. Why not? Frog. Pretty good frog, actually. The skull should be a little more delicate, but like, it's fine. Again, it's fine. There's a snake. There's a snake. The skulls are a little too hardy. Snake skulls, it's a very kind of small top part, and then typically the bottom jaw is just two bones like this in a V. And that's because snakes need to like open their jaw real wide to get the rats in. But yeah, so this snake on the left has the right kind of ribs. The snake on the right, I guess its ribs are missing. It does have two heads. That does occur in nature. They usually don't live very long, though. All right. A mistake God knew not to make. This is a giant spider skeleton. There's several things wrong with this. I do love them. I have one. I have a spider skeleton. I bought it because it's absolutely ridiculous. Spiders have exoskeletons. They do not have bones. If you'll see on the right, this is the shed of a spider. But I love them, and I do kind of want that giant. I do kind of want the giant spider skeleton. So it's kind of, its back part here is all rib. That's you'll notice in spiders their back part doesn't open and close to get ribs in, to get air in. So that's unnecessary. I don't know, several things wrong. I'm running out of time. All right, so how big can you get with bones? You can with an exoskeleton. So the Japanese spider crab has an exoskeleton. So you can get pretty big with an exoskeleton. You can get the size of the spider we saw in the store. So there's no need to have bones to be that big. This is the largest thing with an exoskeleton. Here it is visiting the art gallery. This bug no longer exists, but he's very cute. So I wanted to show him visiting the little art gallery. Yeah, but you don't need a skeleton to either get that big or be a spider. So 0 out of 10 for accuracy, but 10 out of 10 for how much I love them. This is kind of more accurate. It's more of an artistic representation, but if this is like a skeleton, you know, it's kind of looks like an exoskeleton. Not as fun though. Okay, octopus bones. No, this is the only hard part of an octopus. It's the beak that goes in the middle. This is, yeah, the rest of the octopus is squish. Okay, somebody requested sharks. Here's our sharks. This is kind of a great white shark, I assume. This is what a great white shark skeleton looks like. The rib cage is it's like up here a little bit. It does not go all the way back down. The shark has like cartilaginous bones. It's not like a hard bone like us, which is why it's browned so much in this exhibit. Also, you'll notice the skull is a very different shape. There's kind of the mouth bone and then this top part that has like a, yeah, but it doesn't look like the model that I found here in the, it's a little different. It's a little different. Fish. Okay, fish. They do their own thing, like I said. But this model that I found, I assume it's a piranha because it has sharp teeth. But if you look at the top left here, this is what a piranha skeleton looks like. I would not call myself qualified to talk about fish skeletons. I know very little about them. Mammal skeletons is what I know a lot about. Fish skeletons, no idea. But just looking at this, it feels incorrect. But if you look, this skeleton, besides the teeth, looks a lot closer to this skeleton that I found on the bottom left, which is a lionfish. It has the bones that kind of go up and back. It's got this kind of decorative bottom fin at the bottom here. The skull is a lot more similar to the model that I found in the store. So I would call this a lionfish with piranha teeth, perhaps, if I wanted. All right. Thank you for watching. I'm kind of out of time, but if anyone has an extremely burning question, I will answer it very quickly and then get out of here. Otherwise, I appreciate that you came to my very silly panel. Are bones tasty? You can make broth out of the marrow, but bones themselves would probably just taste like dust. There's a lot of calcium in them. What's my favorite bone? My favorite bone is the zygomatic bone because I like the name of it, and it's your cheekbone, which is very fun. You could ground bones to make your bread. It would add a lot of calcium to your bread. It'd probably be healthy bread. It might be a little grainy. Yeah, your bones are wet. Somebody asked me recently, are your bones wet? Yes, your bones are wet. They're kind of surrounded by fluids, and then they are very much, there's a lot of blood and veins going through them. Your bones heal. That's why your bones can heal pretty quickly. Yes, your insides are very, very wet. I have never licked a bone. Well, I guess, no, I've eaten like a chicken wing. So yes, I've licked a bone, but it was a chicken bone. Bagged soup. They make you the blood. Yes. Bones are a blood factor. Yes, they make your red blood cells. It's very important to have your bones. I'm waiting. Bones make blood. Yes. In the bone marrow of your long bones, that's where your red blood cells come from. It's important. It's very important. Blood is bone juice. Yes, that is correct. All right. Well, I do think that I have to go, but I'm glad you all know that blood is bone juice now. That's very important. Yeah, bones are very wet. They look dry when you see them outside, but when they're inside. Yes, go read bone books. It's very fun. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I will be signing off.